The final ray of sunlight vanished as the palm fronds crashed down, sealing the entrance to the sinkhole. Through the settling dust and darkness, I heard his voice smooth, almost tender. "These should keep you company forever," Marco said, dropping a handful of seashells that clattered against the limestone floor. Each one I had collected during our 15 years together now marked my tomb. Then silence. Not just absence of sound, but a suffocating quiet that crawled inside me and squeezed my lungs. The darkness followed, absolute, crushing black that made me question if my eyes were even open. And finally came the cold, a deep chill that rose from the stone beneath me and seeped into my bones. 15 years. That's how long we'd been married. 15 years of shared morning coffees, Caribbean vacations, anniversary dinners that gradually became mechanical obligations. We were partners. Once. At least I believed we were. I'd always been the scientist, marine biology my passion, coral reefs my expertise. My hands perpetually stained with research dyes, my thoughts consumed with oceanic preservation. Marco was the charmer, hospitality management, guest relations, the face everyone remembered at our small beachfront resort. His voice could convince anyone of anything, until it couldn't anymore, until it went silent. The signs had been there for months. How his eyes glazed over when I discussed my research. The way he'd check his phone during our dinner conversations. How he never once asked why my latest discovery of a unique coral symbiosis mattered not just to me, but potentially to reef conservation worldwide. I found a previously undocumented algae-coral relationship in the Blue Cove Reef system near our island home. A microorganism that helped corals survive rising water temperatures, potentially worth millions in conservation grants and biotechnology applications. I didn't think Marco would care. Conservation wasn't his language. Profit margins were. When I first showed him my findings, he smiled wider than he had in months. "We should dive there together," he suggested. "Just us, like the old days." I remember laughing, relieved that maybe we were reconnecting. He arranged everything: the boat, the dive gear, the picnic lunch. I brought my research notes and sample collection equipment. The boat ride to Blue Cove was quiet but pleasant. The turquoise water sparkled under the Caribbean sun as we cut through gentle waves. I pointed out flying fish skimming across the surface. Marco nodded, his eyes hidden behind expensive sunglasses. We anchored at the cove's edge by noon. The site was secluded, about half a mile from the nearest dive spot tourists frequented. I'd marked the reef formation 3 months earlier during a preliminary survey but hadn't had time for a proper examination. That morning, I felt something electric in my chest, the thrill of scientific discovery mixed with hope that Marco and I might find our way back to each other. He carried 2 dive bags, mine lightweight with collection tools and his unusually bulky. I didn't question why. The dive began perfectly. Visibility was excellent, the water a comfortable 82 degrees. I led us to the southern edge of the reef wall, stopping occasionally to photograph formations. Marco stayed a few kicks behind me, unusually focused on our surroundings. When we reached the vibrant coral outcropping, I pointed excitedly. They're a distinctive patch of coral hosting my discovery, thriving despite warmer water conditions that had bleached neighboring formations. "This is it," I signaled through my mask, my heart racing. I hovered carefully near the reef, taking samples and documenting the habitat. Behind me, I sensed Marco drifting away, but my focus remained on my work. The evidence was clear: this symbiotic relationship could revolutionize coral preservation techniques. After 20 minutes of meticulous collection, I turned to share my excitement with Marco. He hovered several yards away, gesturing for me to follow him toward a darkened fissure in the reef wall. Something in his body language made me hesitate. "Elena," his voice crackled through our underwater communication system, "I found something incredible. Come look." I secured my samples and swam toward him, curiosity overriding my caution. As I approached, I noticed he'd removed something from his dive bag, not scientific equipment but what looked like a heavy mesh net. "What's that for?" I asked, treading water a few feet away. Marco's eyes behind his mask were unreadable. "I'm sorry," he said flatly. The push came suddenly, his palm against my tank, propelling me backward into the narrow crevice. Before I could react, he was kicking powerfully away. I tried to follow, but found myself caught in the natural chimney of the reef, disoriented in the shadows. That's when I heard it, the distinctive crack of expanding dive explosives. They were small charges used for emergency exits in cave diving. but Marco had repurposed them. The reef entrance collapsed in a cloud of sediment and limestone fragments. I kicked desperately toward the falling debris, but too late. My exit was sealed, leaving me trapped in an underwater sinkhole with 45 minutes of air remaining. Marco, I screamed through the communicator. What are you doing? Open this up. Silence. Then his voice, disturbingly calm. You always loved your corals. More than me, Elena. Now you can join them permanently. His communication went dead. I pressed against the collapsed entrance, my breath coming in panicked bursts. This couldn't be happening. Not Marco. Not after everything we'd built together. But as my racing heart slowed enough for rational thought, I knew the truth. This wasn't impulsive. He'd calculated every move from the moment we left shore. The extra heavy dive bag, the insistence on diving alone without the usual resort staff, his sudden interest in my research location. I forced myself to calm down, to preserve air. Floating in the dim sinkhole, I assessed my situation. The space was roughly circular, about 30 feet in diameter with a domed ceiling that rose perhaps 20 feet above water level. Faint blue light filtered through tiny fissures in the limestone, revealing a partial air pocket at the top. I swam upward and broke the surface, removing my regulator to breathe the stale, humid air. The space was tight but allowed me to remove my tank while I thought. 15 years of marriage had ended with one act of cold, calculated betrayal. I was entombed with no one aware of my location, or so I believed. I don't know how long I floated there, conserving energy and air, calculating scenarios and survival probabilities. Time behaves differently when you're trapped. Every sound magnifies the drip of condensation, the gentle lap of water against stone, the increasingly loud thud of your own heartbeat. I thought about everything, my research team expecting data. Next week, the conservation committee awaiting my presentation, my sister scheduled to visit next month. And Marco, always Marco. My hands trembled as I checked my dive watch. Nearly 2 hours had passed. I had perhaps 20 minutes of air left if I used it sparingly, descending only to check for possible exits. The beam from my dive light caught on something in the water below, not coral, not limestone. Movement. My heart pounded as a dark figure rose from the depths, breaking the surface 10 feet away. For a terrifying moment, I couldn't process what I was seeing, who I was seeing in this sealed underwater chamber. A woman treaded water, pulling back her diving hood to reveal a face I recognized immediately. Short-cropped silver hair framed, weather-worn features, deep-set eyes that caught mine with undisguised surprise. Dr. Alvarez? I gasped, recognizing the legendary marine biologist who'd disappeared from the scientific community 3 years earlier. Keep your voice down, she said softly, her Spanish accent still pronounced. Sound carries strangely here. I stared in disbelief. How? What are you doing in here? Dr. Isabel Alvarez, once the leading coral reef expert in the Caribbean, presumed dead after a diving accident, treaded water before me, very much alive. Her diving gear looked worn but functional, modified for extended use. I might ask you the same, she replied, studying my expression. But from the look on your face and the collapsed entrance, I'm guessing this wasn't a planned visit. I shook my head, struggling to form coherent thoughts. My husband, he sealed me in. He tried to kill you, she finished flatly. I heard the explosives. Limestone doesn't just collapse like that naturally. I nodded, still processing her presence. But how are you here? Everyone thinks you died years ago. Isabel's face hardened. There's another way in and out, but it's not easy. She gestured toward a narrow underwater passage barely visible in the dim light. I've been living in the connected cave system since my disappearance. Living here? For 3 years? She paddled closer, her expression unreadable. When the world takes everything from you, sometimes the only peace is found in leaving it behind. She paused. Your husband, why did he do this? I clutched my sample container. My research. I discovered a heat-resistant coral symbiosis. It's valuable, potentially revolutionary for reef preservation. Isabel's eyes flickered with recognition. And he wanted it for himself. The grants, the patents, the recognition, I confirmed bitterly. He's probably already claiming I had an accident. Isabel nodded solemnly. Men like that believe they can rewrite any story, even nature itself. She glanced at my dwindling air gauge. We should move soon. The passage is narrow and you'll need what's left in your tank. Why would you help me? I asked, still wary. Her weathered face softened slightly. Because I've been on both sides, betrayed and then forgotten. There's a special kind of loneliness in that. Something raw in her voice resonated with my fresh wound. I nodded slowly, accepting this impossible alliance. The tunnel system connects to a hidden cove on the north side, Isabel explained, checking her equipment. It's about 40 minutes if we're efficient. Parts are tight. You'll need to stay calm and follow my lead precisely. We prepared in silence, Isabel sharing her spare regulator connected to her tank to conserve my remaining air. As we submerged, she led me toward a dark opening barely wide enough for our shoulders. The limestone walls closed around us as we swam single file through the natural tunnel. The passage twisted downward first, forcing a steeper pressure building in my ears. The beam from Isabel's light created eerie shadows across the jagged surfaces. After about 15 minutes of careful navigation, we entered a larger chamber. Isabel signaled for us to surface into another air pocket. Rest here, she said once we'd removed our regulators. The next section is more challenging. The chamber was small but had clearly been adapted as a living space. A waterproof bag hung from a natural stone shelf, containing what looked like basic supplies. A few plastic containers held what appeared to be personal items. You really live down here, I murmured, the reality of her existence sinking in. Isabel nodded. Not always in this chamber, but in the system. There are 5 connected caverns with air pockets. I moved between them. But why? I asked. What happened to make you disappear? She was quiet for a moment, checking her equipment methodically before answering. My husband was Carlos Alvarez, the resort developer. I interrupted, recognizing the name. He died in a boating accident. Is that what they say? Her voice held no emotion. Carlos was building a massive resort complex that would have destroyed the largest reef system in the region. I opposed the project, publicly presented research showing the environmental impact. I remembered the controversy from years earlier. The Blue Cove Development Project. Yes, when scientific evidence didn't persuade him, I threatened to take legal action. She adjusted her mask absently. Then one night on our boat, we argued. He became violent. In the struggle, he fell overboard. My breath caught. You didn't help him? Her eyes met mine. I tried, but when I reached for the life preserver, I realized something. If he returned to shore, the reef would die. Thousands of species would disappear forever. She paused. I watched him drown. The confession hung in the water between us. The authorities ruled it an accident, she continued. But his business partner knew somehow. He knew. He threatened to expose me unless I signed over my research and property rights. When I refused, there was an accident arranged during one of my dives. But you escaped, I said. I knew these caves from years of research. When I saw what was happening, I removed my tracking device and swam here. She gestured to the surrounding chamber. I've been living between worlds ever since. That's why my coral discovery matters so much, I realized. The same symbiosis you were documenting before you disappeared, Isabel nodded. I couldn't publish my findings, but I continued the work. These caves connect to the reef system. I've been monitoring the effects of rising temperatures for years. We need to get this research out, I said urgently. It could save countless reef systems. First, we need to get you out, Isabel replied. Ready for the next section? We submerged again, swimming deeper into the limestone labyrinth. The passages narrowed dramatically, forcing us to remove our tanks and push them ahead through the tightest spaces. My lungs burned, muscles screaming with each movement. In the most confined tunnel, panic nearly overwhelmed me, the stone pressing against my chest, the darkness absolute except for our lights. Talk to me, I pleaded through our communicators. I need to focus on something. Isabel's voice came through, steady and clear. I was married for 22 years, she began. My daughter Sophia was studying marine biology at the university, brilliant, passionate, with more integrity than both her parents combined. I concentrated on her words as we navigated the crushing passage. She died in a car accident the year before Carlos. The driver was one of his development associates, intoxicated after a project celebration. Her voice remained controlled, but I heard the pain. Carlos buried it, paid off investigators, claimed mechanical failure. That's why you couldn't let his project continue. I realized everyone has a breaking point, she said simply. Mine was watching him profit from destroying what Sophia had loved most. We emerged into a larger tunnel, able to swim side by side again. After another 20 minutes, I sensed a change in the water, subtle currents, slightly warmer temperature. Then ahead, impossibly blue light filtering through crystal water. We're close, Isabel confirmed. The final passage opened abruptly into open water, the sudden brightness almost painful. We surfaced into a sheltered cove, surrounded by steep limestone cliffs that hid it from passing boats. The afternoon sun hung low on the horizon, turning the water to liquid gold. I removed my mask, gulping fresh air, feeling the warmth on my skin like a miracle. Isabel surfaced beside me, her weathered face lifted toward the sky. "Welcome back," she said quietly. We swam to a small beach concealed within the cove. My legs trembled as they touched sand, muscles weak from tension and exertion. Isabel led me to a hidden recess in the cliff wall where she had stashed emergency supplies, fresh water, a basic first aid kit, and a waterproof bag containing clothes. "There's a fishing village 3 miles north along the coast," she explained, pointing. "You can find help there." I turned to her. "Come with me. We can expose what happened both to you and to me." She shook her head. "My life above ended years ago. But your research, our research, it matters now more than ever." Isabel looked out at the ocean, conflict visible on her face. "I've lived in shadows so long. Then maybe it's time for both of us to step into the light," I said. We hiked for nearly 2 hours along the rocky coastline, arriving at the fishing village as twilight settled. The small cluster of weathered buildings seemed frozen in time. Wooden boats pulled onto the shore. Fishing nets hung to dry, the scent of grilled catch in the air. "T, the village's only phone." I called my research partner, James, hands shaking. As I dialed, "Elena," his voice cracked with disbelief. "My God, we thought Marco reported an accident." He said, "I'm alive." I cut him off. "Marco tried to kill me. He's after my research." Silence then. "He's been at the institute all day. He's already submitted paperwork claiming joint ownership of your discovery. There's a press conference scheduled for tomorrow morning." My stomach clenched. "I need you to delay him. Tell no one I called. I'm bringing back proof and a witness." We spent the night in a fisherman's spare room, Isabel increasingly anxious as we planned our return. By dawn, we'd secured a ride to the main island with a local boat captain who asked no questions. As we approached the harbor, I could see the resort in the distance, white buildings gleaming in the morning sun, oblivious tourists enjoying their vacations. And somewhere in there, Marco, believing he'd succeeded in eliminating me. "Are you ready?" I asked Isabel as we docked. She squared her shoulders, her silver hair catching the sunlight. 3 years in darkness is long enough." We took a taxi directly to the Marine Research Institute. The modern glass building reflected the palm trees surrounding it, its laboratories housing some of the Caribbean's most important conservation work. As we approached the entrance, I saw camera crews setting up. The press conference was about to begin. "Wait," Isabel stopped me. "We need to be strategic. If we confront him publicly without proof, it becomes your word against his." She was right. We slipped in through a side entrance I knew would be unlocked for early staff. The institute was buzzing with unusual activity, technicians setting up sound equipment in the main atrium, caterers arranging refreshments. We found James in his lab, his face draining of color when he saw me. "Elena, thank God," he whispered, embracing me. Then, noticing my companion, his eyes widened further. "Dr. Alvarez? But you're alive," she finished. "Like Elena." Quickly, I explained everything: Marco's betrayal, my imprisonment, Isabel's rescue, and her own story. James listened, horror and determination alternating across his face. "The press conference starts in 20 minutes, he said. "Marco has your research notes, claiming you shared authorship. He's brought investors from a pharmaceutical company." "I have the original samples," I said, retrieving the sealed container from my bag. "And we have Dr. Alvarez living proof of another betrayal." James made several urgent calls while Isabel and I reviewed my research data on his computer. The symbiotic organism was exactly as I'd documented, potentially revolutionary for coral preservation in warming oceans. Together with Isabel's years of hidden observations, we had compelling evidence that couldn't be dismissed. Exactly a.m. We heard applause from the atrium. The conference had begun. We watched on James's monitor as Marco stepped to the podium. Handsome in a linen suit, his expression appropriately solemn. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "This is a bittersweet moment. As many of you know, my wife, Dr. Elena Suarez, was lost in a tragic diving accident 2 days ago." His voice faltered perfectly. "The cameras loved it. Elena was brilliant, passionate, about her work until the very end. Her final discovery, which we were documenting together when the accident occurred, represents a breakthrough in coral preservation technology. I felt sick watching his performance. The practice grief, the humble credit sharing. Now, James whispered, with Isabel beside me. I walked into the atrium through the side door. The room fell silent as heads turned. Marco froze mid-sentence, his face draining of color exactly as I'd imagined countless times during my entrapment. "Hello, Marco," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. "Surprised to see me?" He stumbled back from the podium. "Elena? How?" "Alive and well," I continued, approaching him slowly. "Though not thanks to you." The cameras swiveled between us, capturing every moment. Marco's eyes darted, calculating his options. "There was a cave-in," he stammered. "I tried to reach you, but you triggered explosive charges to trap me in that sinkhole," I said evenly. "You left me to die so you could steal my research and the recognition that came with it." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Marco stepped toward me, reaching out as if to embrace me, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Elena, you're confused, traumatized. Let me help you." I stepped back. "We have evidence, Marco. Dive records, explosive residue analysis, and a witness." Isabel stepped forward, and a collective gasp went through the older researchers who recognized her immediately. "Dr. Isabel Alvarez," someone whispered. Marco's professional mask began to crack. "This is absurd. She's been dead for years, like Elena was supposed to be?" James asked, joining us with a tablet displaying the dive data. Security personnel moved closer as Marco's desperation became visible. "You can't prove anything. We already have," I said. "The authorities are waiting outside. This press conference will just have a different headline than you planned." As if on cue, 2 police officers entered from the main doors. Marco looked from them to me, his charm evaporating. "You never understood what we could have had," he hissed. "I built everything while you played with your precious corals." "No, Marco," I replied. "You never understood that some discoveries aren't meant to be owned, they're meant to save something." The officers approached, reading him his rights. As they led him away, he looked back once. The man I'd shared 15 years with, now a stranger. The press erupted with questions. Isabel touched my arm gently. "This is your moment. Tell them what they need to hear." I stepped to the podium, looking out at the sea of faces and cameras. "My name is Dr. Elena Suarez. I'm alive because of an extraordinary woman and a discovery. That matters more than any individual recognition." For the next hour, Isabel and I presented our combined research, her years of secret observation merged with my recent findings. We explained the significance of the heat-resistant symbiosis, its potential applications for reef preservation worldwide, and the urgent need for protected marine areas. By evening, our story had spread across global news networks. The scientific community rallied around us, offering support and research partnerships. The attempted murder charges against Marco ensured the story's prominence, but it was the research breakthrough that dominated scientific headlines. 2 weeks later, I stood on the Institute's observation deck, watching the sunset paint the ocean in fiery oranges and reds. Isabel joined me, looking more at ease in her researcher's clothes than I'd yet seen her. "The Conservation Committee approved our proposal," I told her. "Full protection for Blue Cove and funding for the symbiosis application project." She nodded, satisfaction in her weathered features. "Sophia would have been proud." "What will you do now?" I asked. "The charges against you were dropped, self-defense and the statute of limitations." Isabel gazed out at the horizon. "I thought I'd stay in the shadows forever. Now I'm not sure. The research team would benefit from your expertise." I offered. "We've secured funding for 5 years." She smiled slightly. "Perhaps it's time to build something new, something that honors what we almost lost." I understood she meant more than just coral reefs. We both carried wounds from betrayal, mine fresh and raw, hers long scarred over but never fully healed. "The preliminary transplants are showing positive results," I said. "The symbiotic relationship is spreading to adjacent coral formations. Life finds a way to adapt," Isabel observed. Even after devastation, we stood in comfortable silence as the last light faded from the sky. Stars appeared, reflecting on the calm water below. "I've been offered the director position," I said finally. "After the media attention, the board wants to expand our conservation work." Isabel raised an eyebrow. "Will you take it?" "Only if you'll consider co-directing the research division. Your experience is outdated." she interrupted, is invaluable. I corrected. No one understands these reef systems like you do. She considered this, her expression thoughtful. From a cave dweller to a director, life takes unexpected turns. Sometimes being buried isn't the end, I said quietly. It's just part of becoming something new. Isabel nodded slowly. I'll consider it. 3 months later, our first major conservation initiative launched. Blue Cove became a protected marine sanctuary, with Isabel and me leading the research team documenting the coral symbiosis application. The program attracted international attention and funding, with researchers arriving from around the world. To learn our techniques, on the anniversary of my accident, I returned to the hidden cove where Isabel had first led me back to the surface. The limestone cliffs rose majestically against the clear sky, the water below crystal blue and teeming with life. Isabel joined me, carrying a small memorial wreath made of sustainable materials. For Sophia, she explained, and for the women we were before. Together, we released the wreath onto the water, watching as the current carried it gently out toward the reef. Do you ever think about him? Isabel asked quietly. Marco? I considered. Less and less. The divorce was finalized last month. He'll serve at least 7 years. That's not what I asked. I understood. I think about how someone I built a life with could see me as disposable. How he could value recognition over everything we had. She nodded. The betrayal never fully leaves you, but it changes, becomes less sharp, more instructive. Is that why you're finally moving out of the cave system? I asked with a small smile. Isabel laughed, a sound that had become less rare in recent months. Perhaps. The apartment by the institute is certainly more comfortable. Below us, fish darted through the clear water, their scales catching the sunlight. Further out, our research buoys marked the expanding areas of treated coral, already showing remarkable resilience against the season's warming temperatures. We're making a difference, I said, more to myself than to her. Yes, Isabel agreed. But more importantly, we survived to tell the story. I thought about the darkness of the sinkhole, the moment I believed my life was ending, and then about all that had followed the rescue, the truth revealed, the work now flourishing. Marco had tried to bury me, but instead, I'd discovered something stronger than betrayal, purpose and connection. Ready to head back? Isabel asked. The new research team arrives tomorrow. I took one last look at the hidden cove, my unexpected gateway to a second chance. Yes, I said. I'm ready. As we walked along the coastal path, the sun warm on our shoulders and the future unfolding before us, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before the cave: hope, undiminished by darkness, stronger for having survived the depths.